รู้ชอบได้โดยพระองค์เองนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตขอน้อมแด่พระผู้มีพระภาคเจ้าพระองค์นั้นอะระหะโตซึ่งเป็นผู้ไกลจากกิเลสสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะตรัสรู้ชอบได้โดยพระองค์เองนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตขอน้อมแด่พระผู้มีพระภาคเจ้าพระองค์นั้นอะระหะโตซึ่งเป็นผู้ไกลจากกิเลสสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะตรัสรู้ชอบได้โดยพระองค์เอง
ส แล้วปัจจัยนี้จะมีหลายแขกไม่ใช่สุชาติไม่ใช่อาหารไทยนะครับถั่วพี่จะถวายใช่ไหมไม่ทราบค่ะโอเคเล่นจบจบกันครับ
เข้าโรงเรียนได้ยังกันรู้อ่ะไปโรงเรียนยังครับ
ไปแล้วค่ะรีเซพชันแล้วอันนี้เยียโฟไม่บอกลูกเลยจะฝากอะไรไม่หนาวหรอกไม่เล่นกล้องขาของจับตั้งกล้องนั่งกับหลวงพ่อไม่ช่วยร้านนั่งลงในพ่อเก่งไปหมดนี่เด็กจริงๆนะต้องดูเรียกเขาถวายแล้วค่ะyou can hold together. She can hold you back.
เดี๋ยวจะมีก็เป็นการลงหัวขามาแล้วก็เดี๋ยวมันก็มาติดมาวิ่งเข้ามาเนี่ย
Thank you.
ร่วมถวายสังฆทานนะครับกราบพระนะครับเอตานิมยังพันเตสัตตานิสัปปะริวารานิสีรวันตัสสะโอโนชยามะสาธุโนพันเตสีรวันโตเอตานิพัตตานิสัปปะริวารานิปฏิคันหาตุอัมหากังทีฆรตังหิตายะสุขายะข้าแต่พระคุณเจ้าผู้เจริญข้าพระเจ้าทั้งหลายขอน้อมถวายซึ่งภัตตาหารกับของที่เป็นบริวารทั้งหลายเหล่านี้แด่พระคุณเจ้าขอพระคุณเจ้าจงรับซึ่งภัตตาหารกับของที่เป็นบริวารทั้งหลายเหล่านี้เพื่อประโยชน์เพื่อความสุขแก่ข้าพระเจ้าทั้งหลายสิ้นกาลนานเทอญ
ยะตาวริวหาปุราปาริปุเรนติสังการังเอวเมวะอิโตทินังเปตานังอุปกปปติจิตังปฏิตังทุมังคิปะเมวะสมิจตุสัพเพปเรนตุสังกปปะจันโดปนรสโสยะตามานิโจนิรโสยะตาสัมปิติโยวจันโดสัพโรโกเวนัสตุมาเตภวัตวันตรายโยสุขิเตกายุโกภวะอภิวาทานสีเลสนิจังเวดาปัจจายโนจาตารโอธัมมเวดันติอายุวันโอสุขังบาลังมาวะตุสัพพมังคลังรักขันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพพุทธานุภาเวนะสันดาสุติภวันตุเตมาวะตุสัพพมังคลังรักขันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพธัมมานุภาเวนะสันดาสุติภวันตุเตมาวะตุสัพพมังคลังรักขันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพสังฆานุภาเวนะสันดาสุติภวันตุเตสาธุ
คิดมาจากความคิด we're going to what Ram and the later she take got this king today รับศีล5เอาตำราให้คุณ
ไม่เป็นไรนะไม่เป็นไรนะดูไม่พี่ดังได้ตัวนี้ไปเอาได้ใช่ไหมอังกฤษไปเขาเรียกเอาไปคนนี้ถูกไหมอังกฤษมีภาษาไทยภาษาไทยภาษาไทยอังกฤษยูโน่อังกฤษเอาประเภทนั่งหน้าเถอะในเรื่องนี้อ่ะ
เราจะกราบพระพร้อมกันนะครับที่อารักษาพร้อมกันกราบพระนะครับอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภควาพุทธังภควันตังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภควตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมมัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะมะยังพันเตติสรณเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยาจามะทุติยัมปิมะยังพันเตติสรณเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยาจามะตติยัมปิมะยังพันเตติสรณเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยาจามะ
ตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
พุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิ
พุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิ
สังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิ
สังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ทุติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ตติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังคัจฉามิ
ทิสรณกัมมังนิติตัง
อามะพันเต
ปานาติปาตาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
ปานาติปาตาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
อาเทนาดานาเวรมณีสิกขาป ดังสมาธิยามิ
อธินาทานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
กาเมสุมิจฉาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
กาเมสุมิจฉาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
สุระเมรยมัจจาปมัตตังนาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
สุราเมรยมัชฌัปปมาทฐานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
เอมานิปัญจสิกขาปะทานิสีเลนะสุขติยันติสีเลนะโภคสัมปทาสีเลนะดุติยันติสมาสีลังเวโสดาย
สาธุ
So here we are again. Always very nice to be here, to see people I'm beginning to know so well now. It seems only the other day we met, under rather different circumstances. So, and that was a great day. That was, I think it's been said it was our record for the number of people. We think so. We didn't count, of course, but it looked like a record. And so thank you all very much for coming and making it such a great occasion. We don't have many great occasions. It's a really very great occasion. So, I'm more than that. And it's amazing, you know, how efficiently it was all organised, because it all started quite on time and proceeded quite smoothly and finished, and a couple of hours later you wouldn't have known it had happened. It was all cleared up and we were back to normal. It was quite extraordinary. I almost had to pinch myself to think, did it happen? And of course we're still in that, what's known as the Kartika month, which is a month that follows the Vasa, when the Katina can be enacted. So in various temples now, people are having their Katina celebrations. And I well remember when I used to live in Thailand, we would be touring around all the Saka, all the branches of Wat Pah Pong after the Vasa, after Pansa, to attend different Katinas. They're all much the same. I'm not quite sure why we did it, but it was a time to see different temples and to meet up with old friends, and I think that was the main attraction for us. So, gradually we're getting back to normal, life gets back to normal. And here we are again at Queen Peter's restaurant on a Sunday morning. And a great chance we have to be together and to practice the Dhamma and listen to the Dhamma. And I reflect on this opportunity more perhaps than many of you might. Partly because I grew up in a country which knew nothing much about Buddhism at all. So it was quite a find to run across Buddhism back in those days. And partly also because I go in the prisons where people don't have the same opportunities as here. And I had to sort of fight with the authorities a little bit from time to time to get
certain what they would call privileges for prisoners. Like, there's a man I know who's been in prison a very, very long time and who's made tremendous changes in his life already. And he's had no contact with Buddhism outside of prison, of course. He's been in prison for well over 20 years. But he's done very well. He's practiced, it's changed his outlook, changed him as a person, almost totally. And now he's read more, and he's read about the one pra, the opus Dei, one pra. So he wants to observe one pra. He wants to observe sin on one pra. He wants to observe sin there on one pra. But of course this is a bit of a mystery to prison service. So I've got my work cut out now to explain to the prison service the importance of one pra and keeping sin there. And particularly, of course, it means he can't eat afternoon. Well, the hot meat was served well afternoon. So that's another hurdle we have to overcome to try and get him some food for the day. But you see, when you come up against these sort of obstacles, then you really appreciate the opportunities that you and most people have who are not in these circumstances. Things that probably you take for granted. You want to keep sin there, you keep sin there. Not many can. But if you're in prison, it's a different matter. And of course, to his great credit, he's very determined to do this because he sees it as an important development in his life as a Buddhist. And I shall be, one of my jobs this evening is to write something up in support of that and to explain the need that there is for people like him to keep sin there and to observe the one pra. And these are needs. They are important in the training of anyone, because when there is a regular opportunity, a regular chance to come together to practice the Dhamma and to observe precepts that are more than you would normally take, then that advances your practice, advances your training. So you can see it as a need, it's almost a necessity if you really want to progress. The other thing I have to explain to the prison service is that we don't have exactly rigidly defined definitions of what is a Buddhist and what isn't a Buddhist. And we know that some Buddhist people just come to the temple once a year, and some people come every week, and some people hardly ever bother with the precepts, or if they do, it's only the first one or two, or sometimes three. But, people change, people progress. And if it is only once a year you come to the temple, well, we hope that in time it'll be twice a year. And if it is only 2 or 3 of the precepts that you'll bother to keep, well, we hope that eventually you'll get round to expanding that and keeping all 5, and even later on 8, and so on. And gradually, of course, people do make progress, people do grow and develop. And that's what this is about. The Buddha Dhamma is about nurturing people so that they do grow and develop, and step by step, bit by bit, become better people, eventually evolving as enlightened people. It's an evolutionary process. It doesn't happen all at once. And yes, you can, in a kind of academic way, learn a lot about Buddhism, and it might not touch you at all. I once, in Thailand, had to give a talk to some graduate students, and they had been learning Pali and Buddhism and knew quite a lot. But I didn't talk to them about the theories of Buddhism, I talked to them about the practice and what my life as a forest monk was like. And it was a very informal meeting, sitting around a table. And at the end of it, the professor, who was a very learned and very well-known person, friend of mine actually, said, well, that was all very interesting. He said, but we can't do that. So he could learn, he knew probably more academically than I will ever know. But it didn't really touch him. It hadn't really got to the point of being part of him and changing him. The evolutionary process is one which is difficult to define. Gradually, we, as it were, catch the Buddhist teachings. We don't necessarily just learn them, we catch them. And they become part of us, and they change our lives. I sympathise. I used to be dragged to church when I was a kid and I didn't like it much. So, one pra, and whatever opportunities you have to come together are times when you catch these Buddhist teachings and they become more and more a part of you, something that you live. Something else that's come up for me this week with my prison stuff is that somewhere in one of the prisons a chap has got hold of some books and CDs from another source. And before he's allowed to have them, I have to look at them, I have to vet them and make sure they're safe. And there's nothing in them that's going to cause him to blow up the prison or something like that. And so I looked at the books, I looked at the stuff, and I've been a bit disappointed, I have to say it, some of the teaching in it about karma. So I sympathise. I used to be dragged to church when I was a kid and I didn't like it much. So one pra, and whatever opportunities you have to come together are times when you catch these Buddhist teachings and they become more and more a part of you, something that you live. Something else that's come up for me this week with my prison stuff is that somewhere in one of the prisons a chap has got hold of some books and CDs from another source. And before he's allowed to have them, I have to look at them, I have to vet them and make sure they're safe. And there's nothing in them that's going to cause him to blow up the prison or something like that. And so I looked at the books, I looked at the stuff, and I've been a bit disappointed, I have to say it, some of the teaching in it about karma. And karma, or gum, is something which is a very important part of our practice and teaching. But it's a term, a word which is is very badly understood here in the West, and I think even by the look of it, amongst many Buddhist people, certainly many schools of Buddhism. So I'm just going to mention this. First of all, despite what some people think, and some schools of Buddhism seem to put forward, the Buddha didn't say that everything in our lives can be blamed on Dhamma. There are many influences on us, and some things that we experience, some character traits that we have, yes, we could trace back to Dhamma, the things we've done in the past. But not everything, because there are different forces which prey upon us. And we all know about the weather, for a start, the sort of physical environment, that plays its part. And then there's the sort of process of, seeds and that sort of thing that start off in one form and gradually develop into another. We're also part of a process like that too. We grow up and we grow older and things change within our physical form. So there are these different influences. Mind, the sort of psychic influences that we experience. So Dhamma is just one of several forces that influence our life and influence our growth. But it is an important one, of course, and it's one over which we have some control. We don't have control over the weather, we don't have much control over the evolutionary process, but we do have control over what we say and what we do. And particularly, of course, we have control over what we mean to do, what we intend to do. And this was a very important point that the Buddha made, and it's one that in this book I've been looking at seems to be missed completely. It isn't just what you say and do, it's what you intend to say and do. And the Buddha said very clearly that Cetana then come. So we have to be constantly looking into ourselves, looking at our minds, looking at what's going on there. And the more aware we become, the more honest we have to be about what we're really about and what we're trying to do. The other day I was talking about this too with someone because, I used to be an actor in a while. And lately, because it's the 50th anniversary of where I trained and where I worked, I've been in touch with some people from that distant part of my life. And again, the sort of thoughts have come up in the minds of people as to why I abandoned that, or what the connection could be between that life and life as a monk. But one of the things we always had to do, we were taught to do, when we were preparing a part, we would look at the text, we would look at what the person was saying and doing and all that. We break it down, analyse it very carefully, and we would be looking at what that person was trying to do. The Buddha didn't say that everything in our lives can be blamed on Dhamma. There are many influences on us, and some things that we experience, some character traits that we have, yes, we could trace back to Dhamma, the things we've done in the past. But not everything, because there are different forces which prey upon us. And we all know about the weather, for a start, the sort of physical environment, that plays its part. And then there's the sort of process of, seeds and that sort of thing that start off in one form and gradually develop into another. We're also part of a process like that too. We grow up and we grow older and things change within our physical form. So there are these different influences. Mind, sort of psychic influences that we experience. become is just one of several forces that influence our life and influence our growth. But it is an important one, of course, and it's one over which we have some control. We don't have control over the weather, we don't have much control over the evolutionary process, but we do have control over what we say and what we do. And particularly, of course, we have control over what we mean to do, what we intend to do. And this was a very important point that the Buddha made, and it's one that in this book I've been looking at seems to be missed completely. It isn't just what you say and do, it's what you intend to say and do. And the Buddha said very clearly that Cetana Benkam. So we have to be constantly looking into ourselves, looking at our minds, looking at what's going on there. And the more aware we become, the more honest we have to be about what we're really about and what we're trying to do. The other day I was talking about this too with someone because, you know, I used to be an actor and all that. And lately, because it's the 50th anniversary of where I trained and where I worked, I've been in touch with some people from that distant part of my life. And again, the sort of thoughts have come up in the minds of people as to why I abandoned that, or what the connection could be between that life and life as a monk. But you know, one of the things we always had to do, we were taught to do, when we were preparing a part, we would look at the text, we would look at what the person was saying and doing and all that. We'd break it down, analyse it very carefully, and we would be looking at what that person was trying to do. What is he or she trying to do? We were looking, in other words, always at the desire, the tanha, and the cetana, the intention behind those actions. And it's very important. So, at that time I knew nothing about Buddhism, but as I worked on scripts, I was in fact putting into practice a profound part of Buddhist teaching, looking at the intention, looking at the mind behind the action. And that's, of course, something that we as Buddhists must be doing. We must be doing our best to look at what lies behind what we do, what lies behind what we're trying to do. Are we just trying to do that thing? Are we doing it for compassionate reasons? Are we really there to help? Or is it that we want to inflate our own ego and be known as good people or helpful people? Is it just ego, or is it that we really are interested in doing what we're doing? And these are very important questions. Not only that it does, because it leads us to examine ourselves very carefully and become better acquainted with ourselves, but also because in time it makes the quality of our actions and the quality of our lives much more refined and much better. We won't just be doing this because we want to be known as a famous person or an accomplished person. It won't be just because of ego. It will actually gradually be because we want to do that thing. There is something that needs to be accomplished, or the person needs to be helped, or whatever it is. And as we become better able to see that in ourselves, so the quality of our actions will also become more refined and much more skillful. And it will lead us, of course, away from what is unskillful. Our decisions will be better decisions. All decisions, you know, are moral decisions. There's always the element of what is right, what is wrong. And you must be examining yourselves constantly, really, in that way. is what I'm doing right or is it wrong? And there are wrong actions, just as there are right actions. Now I know that here in the West some people are very wary of morality because there are different moralities around on offer. And most of those moralities, those moral stances, come from different versions or different views of what the deity or the God, the creator might be like and might be thinking. So you will get one lot saying it's all right to kill their enemies and another lot who won't. But you know, within Buddhism, we're not dependent on a deity, thank goodness. We're not dependent on someone's or some higher power's view or opinion when it comes to right and wrong. There's a very simple test. Is this skillful or not? Does this cause harm or does it not? And you should be asking yourself when you're considering what is right and what is wrong, whether what you're about to do will harm you or another or both you and another. And if it is harmful, then obviously you stay away from it. You don't have to think about whether it's doing any good, because again, that's a very subjective sort of thing. What is good to one person may not be good to another, but think about it. What is harmful? And it's very obvious what hurts and what harms and what damages. We don't have to think, whether that might be good for a person or whatever. If it hurts, if it harms, it's clear. Stay away from it. So much of our practice as Buddhists then is about this being mindful and aware and looking into our own minds. Ajahn Chah used to say constantly, watch your mind. And the whole sort of, the basic teaching really there was that just that, watch your mind. There's the koba, the sort of rules of the temple and traditions of the temple and the timetable every day, all that stuff. That gave us a framework. The pravinaya, another framework. And within these frames, we led our lives. And these frames helped us to watch our minds. And that's what you have to do. You have to learn to watch your mind. And as you watch your mind, become more and more and more honest with yourself. It's very easy. People do this, they sort of kid themselves that something is all right when it's clearly not all right. Well, don't do that. Just look at what you're doing. Is it skillful or is it not? Will it harm or will it not? And if it will harm, stay away. Don't do it. And just one sort of last note to all this, really. When you came, many of you came to the Forest Hermitage a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure you're going to other places as well, and often do, to Tambu. This is a really good practice. For I'm often a bit cynical about Tambu. They think it's, just sort of traditional stuff. Doesn't matter very much. It's a bit sort of unimportant. But they misunderstand badly. Tambu is very important. It's very important because Tambu means that you are doing good things. You're doing something skillful. And deliberately doing something skillful, going out of your way to do something good, in effect, begins to wash your mind. It begins to cleanse your mind. It leads, because when you deliberately say, I'm going to do this good thing, you're making a decision. You're not just sort of blundering through your life. decision to do that thing, and you're going to some trouble, you're making an effort over it, and in time, keeping on doing those good things, they become your habit. In the classifications of Dhamma, we have habitual Dhamma. Habitual Dhamma is important because habits are often just overlooked. But habits really do affect us, do change us when things become a habit. So if you do tumble and you keep trying to do the good things, those good things will become habit. And that will give a very big foundation to your practice and help you to change your life completely. So I'm a big supporter of Tambun. Tambun isn't, of course, just going to a temple and giving things. It's also keeping the precepts. It's just looking to do quite deliberately, even if only as an exercise, some good things, some skillful things. And it's important. So, well done for all the good things you do here. And please keep doing them for your sake and for the sake of everyone else.
Then we're going to sit back for 10 minutes for meditating.
Keep your minds following the breath now, being mindful and aware of that simple rhythm of breathing in and breathing out. first for yourself, and then you spread your metta, offer your loving kindness to all beings, to everyone and everything. So first, metta, loving kindness for you, for yourself, and then spread it out to touch everyone and everything. Go of this short meditation, open your eyes and be at ease.
So the next meeting here exactly on the 4th December. Next Sunday, the next Dhamma Talk. A lot of our finished already for the at the Wat Talam in later. So we got not so many people left now. Top quality. You told me. พระอาจารย์จังหวะพี่บอกก็จะก้นเป็นอารมณ์ You talk anything belong for. You're welcome. Hey, coming here then.
Oh, I have a question. You talk about
Yeah. I told you. You're coming here.
you talk about skillful and what we do have to be skillful and unharmful. Can you elaborate skillful? I understand skillful sort of different from different contexts.
Well, it's skillful in my mind is that which is productive of something non-harmful, something that's good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's better to keep away from judging things as good. I think that it's actually very much more useful to say,
It's okay.
to consider whether something does harm or not. So something that's skillful does no harm.
Mm.
But I also, I can't help but think in terms of skillful is this translation of kusala. What is kusala? And I think it also suggests a certain kind of creativity. We are creating things by our actions.
Yeah.
So if we're skillful, we are creating things which are at least not doing any damage. And I know that there's quite a lot of criticism goes around these days amongst elements in the Farang camp of Buddhism, which I don't know what to do with, but that's critical of what they see as being negative. So they think sometimes of the precepts as being negative, and they think of, not harming as being negative. But I think that's a real mistake, and I think that's a really quite serious mistake. Because abstaining gives freedom. It gives a freedom. So to my mind, it's not negative at all. It's actually a very positive result from abstaining from things which are clearly harmful. And if you are being careful about doing what is skillful, well, again, we can put it in negative terms. You're doing something which is not harming. But that's a tremendous contribution. When you look around and you think how many actions that people do throughout the course of a day which do actually harm, in very small ways, but even in a working day, people promoting themselves, their business, whatever, it's harming other people. It's pushing that person out the way. It's doing that person down. It's common. There's nothing. I'm not sort of being terribly judgmental about it. It's just more or less what most people do. To refrain from harm is a big contribution.
Also in terms of how doing things that is unharmful, again, it can be quite subjective, because nowadays we look at lots of kids, so unruly, and they do things they don't even know they were actually harming other people or harming the environments, because they do not know what is right or wrong.
That's
what
right.
they are doing.
That's right.
So what can we do?
Well, if it's other people's kids, there's not much you can do.
True, yes, true.
But it's one of the unfortunate consequences of the revolution of the 60s,
Yes.
of which I was part. So I bear some responsibility. But I do think it's a great shame. I come across it a lot, and I see it. I don't go in the schools much now. I leave that to Dhamma. But when I have gone, I've been shocked.
Yeah.
And it's no use to those kids at all. I think I've said it. I'll keep on about this because it's the last time I went in a school, and the young woman teacher has tried to get me to go back. She obviously saw, and I'm not very good at concealing my opinion sometimes. And I think it was all too obvious what I thought that afternoon. I went to the schools in Kenilworth, which is quite a good middle class area. It's wasn't some inner city thugs or something like that. It was quite a good school. And these kids, about 13 or 14 years old, came in and sat in front of me on the floor. And before I started, this young woman teacher, who was probably about late 20s, I would guess, ran around handing out to them pieces of paper on which she'd written questions that they might like to ask. These are 13, 14-year-old kids. So anyway, I gave my talk, and then I said, invite your questions, and they sat there. Questions. And so then, one by one, they read out, they just about managed to read it out, a question. It was the most uninspiring event, I can tell you. So anyway, we sort of laboured our way through the afternoon. And at the end of it, she said, well, right, time's up now, yes. I think you've done awfully well. You've sat there very nicely and listened to the talk and asked some good questions. I'm really pleased with you. And my jaw must have been down here somewhere. Why am I hearing things? I mean, it was just such a bad show, really. And she must have noticed. I just was absolutely staggered by what I was hearing. And these weren't dumb kids. They weren't completely stupid, or you suppose not to be. And then, to crown it, she said to them, okay, you can go now. So they got up and shambled towards the door. And as they shambled towards the door, the pieces of paper that she'd written the questions on slipped from their hands onto the floor. And this woman teacher jumps up and she's running around picking up the bits of paper they'd just thrown on the floor. I mean, when I was a kid, we would have had days of detention for that, and a thick ear to boot, I'm telling you. I couldn't believe it. Appalling. And you know, what kind of training is this for the future? And the other thing that I don't like to see, which I think, children are very protected. People are so afraid of something happening to the kids, so they don't walk to school anymore. They don't, or a lot of them don't. I go past schools. I go to Gartrey Prison. We had to slow down as we approach because we go past a school. It's only a little school. You ought to see the massive 4x4s and things drawn up outside, and there seem to be more mums out there gassing, waiting for the kids than there are kids. All to be driven home, and you mustn't let them catch cold and run any risks or anything like that. And I think that's awful. Life is a risky business. And I think to myself, when I look back on my